Good afternoon, everybody. It's Loxter here from Loxter Reads. Um, I just thought I'd do a quick video about what I'm currently reading, which is, with a couple of exceptions, predominantly library based. I went to the library last week and came back with a number of books to add to my already existing pile of library books. So I have until the 15th of June to get through all these. Actually, some of them are the 9th of June. So we shall see. We'll start with the shortest, which is Seamus Heaney's Seeing Things, a collection of his poetry from the 1991. This is part of my ongoing campaign to read all of Seamus Heaney. He was a poet I liked. He's becoming my favourite poet. I shall probably finish this today because I am 84 pages into 113 pages, and I may reread it before I take it back. This one is due on the 15th of June. Now I'm going to be reaching left, right, and centre for things here because there are so many books. I've had to stash them in different places. The next one I should talk about is the one that I am about. Well, I'd say halfway through because there's a lot of notes and things in here, so that's probably realistically actually about halfway through. That's the Eagle and the Heart, the Tragedy of Richard II and Henry IV by Helen Castor. This one is due on the 9th. I may finish that today, or no, not today, tomorrow probably, depending on how much reading time I focus. This, as it says, is about Richard II and Henry IV. Their stories well documented, not necessarily accurately, by William Shakespeare, which is where I know the story from. So far, it's been quite interesting. Richard II, in my head, is a bit of a dick. Pun unintended, but gratefully received. And Henry IV is somewhat underappreciated. So far, what I've read in here doesn't suggest that my feelings on those things are wrong. Richard II seems to be a very bad king. His personality and his opinions remind me slightly of both Charles I and Tsar Nicholas II, which is not a combination that's likely to end well for anybody. But it's really good. Helen Castor's great. I need to read more Helen Castor. So that's that one. Next is Dante by Alessandro Barbero, translated by Alan Cameron. This is obviously a biography of Dante. It's reasonably short, but I suspect that's because although there's a lot of information, but not a lot of information. If you see what I mean, I know what I meant by that, even if nobody else does. I picked this. Somebody recommended it on a list. It might have been. Anyway, somebody recommended it as a Dante biography, and I read the Divine Comedy last year before, and I really loved it. And I want to read another translation, and I sort of want to know more about Dante. I have some vague familiarity with him as a person, but not enough. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I've read the introduction, which does a good job of sort of contextualising what's about to come. So that's that one. I'll talk about, by the way, why I pick some of these in the library, because what I often do is just pick things at random and as I'm walking around. Next up is Consuming Passions by Judith Flanders. Leisure and Pleasure in Victorian Britain. I picked this one because I've always been fascinated by Victorian Britain. It's one of my favourite periods of history, and I know a bit about the leisures and pleasures of Victorian England because I studied some of them in at university and in reading since. So I picked it because it's right up my street, basically, in terms of subject matter. Talking of right up my street in terms of subject matter. The next one is Now All Roads Lead to France, The Last Years of Edward Thomas by Matthew Hollis. This is a biography of Edward Thomas. Well, it's actually the final 5 years of Edward Thomas's life when he went off to France and at the First World War, and spoiler, died. He was one of the great poets of one of the most interesting poets of the First World War. And I did actually read a fair chunk of this when I had a copy of this a long time ago when I lived at my previous house, but it went the way of a lot of my books when I moved. So I'm going to finally finish reading that. I'm just trying to think where I should go, left or right. Let's finish the pile on the left. Next up is Tracker by Alexis Wright. I picked this one because it's on the women's non-fiction prize list. I think that's the list it's on. It's definitely on a prize list, and it's a really interesting book about Australia, and about a person who is a sort of advocate for Aboriginal self-determination, and it just sounded really interesting. It's a big. It's about 570 pages, but small print. So this one might be a chunky one. This one's supposed to go back on the 9th of June, so that one might need a renewal. Oh, this one's come up a few times. Bury the Chains by Adam Hochschild. I've been reading this on and off, as you can see, for ages, and I keep putting it down and picking up other books. It's not because it's a bad book; it's a very good book, but there's a lot of information in here that it's a very well written book, and it contextualises the British campaign against slavery. It's introduced me to a couple of people who I want to read more about, and it also pops some of the myths about how wonderful Britain was to end slavery, for which it should be praised. I will finish this. This one's due back on the 9th. This one I will finish by the 9th, he says. Okay, next up. Reading Shakespeare's Sonnets, a new commentary by Don Patterson. Don Patterson was, I think he died fairly recently, a Scottish poet. I love Shakespeare's sonnets. I reread them all the time. I thought it was time to dig into a somebody's opinion that isn't mine, to see, and as Dan Patterson's a poet, I'm interested in getting a poet's perspective on the on the sonnets. What I've read so far, I think it's going to be a reasonably unacademic take, which is good. And I might, after I finish reading this, I might read the sonnets again. Next up. Oh yeah, this one's been on the list. Is a previous one. Julia Briggs, Virginia Woolf, An Inner Life. This is probably what it says on the tin. I suspect it's a chunky boy, but I'm fascinated by Virginia Woolf, even though I've read the only book of hers, novel of hers that I think I've read is Orlando. I've read an occasional essay. I've got loads of her books and loads of diary and essays to read. So at some point this year, I was going to do a Virginia Woolf. I wanted to call it Victoria Wood then for some reason. A Virginia Woolf reading thing, and I know it's the 100th anniversary of Mrs. Dalloway. That's probably going to be wrong. So now might be the time. I haven't touched this yet. I keep picking it up. This one's due back on the 9th. It's not going to go back on the 9th. It'll need renewing. But it's there. Then we have. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, Nana Cherry, 1,000 Threads. This is her memoir. Nana Cherry is a musician. I am fascinated by memoirs by artists of any kind. I'm not a massive fan of Nana Cherry's music, but I've seen an interview with her talking about this book, and I think it's going to be up my street. We shall see. That's also, I think, shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction. You might hear a bang in a minute, which is when all the books I'm piling down the side fall over. Then there's Private Revolutions, Coming of Age in New China by Yuan Yang. This is a story about, a non-fiction book about 4 women born in China between in the 1980s and 90s. That's all I know about it. I think again this is on a prize list, which is probably why I picked it up. In fact, I ordered it from the library, so that's almost certainly on a prize list because it wasn't in my library. All hail Acton Library, by the way, which for a small local library is very good. In fact, tomorrow I'm going down there for a talk on Jane Austen, given by a member of the Jane Austen Society, at 2:00. So if you're in the Acton area, then there's The English Civil War, A People's History by Diane Purkiss. the English Civil War is another one of those areas of history that I'm fascinated by. This again is a chunky boy, although again I suspect there's a lot of notes and references at the back. I did start this a long time ago. I think I picked it up. I think I borrowed it off somebody, and then I had to give it back before I could finish it. Again, picked it up because it's an area of history that I'm interested in. I do want to do a real English Civil Wars causes and consequences reading thing, which I might put aside a chunk of time for. I need to think about that. And then finally on my library list is Snow and Steel, Battle of the Bulge, 1944-45, by Peter Caddick Adams. I have read a previous Peter Caddick Adams book, which I thought was excellent. Obviously, the Battle of the Bulge is a very famous battle, of which I know something, but I don't know a lot, so I thought this was a good one to pick up and read again. It's a chunky boy, but the print is very large, and the references are very many, so I think the page count is probably not quite as horrific as I think it's over 700, but it's not quite as horrific as it looks. I picked this because Battle of the Bulge is fascinating. I keep watching clips of things about it, and then thinking, I should really learn a bit more about the Battle of the Bulge. I suspect there's been hundreds of books written about the Battle of the Bulge, like there have been dozens of books written about Arnhem. There's probably a book about every event every day in World War II, but some of them attract more attention than others. Normandy, Arnhem, Dunkirk, Bulge. So that's probably why that came up as one of my things. So I think that's the last of the library books. Now the other two things I've got on the go, or I'm intending to read, are The Master Builder by Henrik Ibsen. This is in the four major plays from Oxford World Classics. The reason I'm reading that is we went to see, some friends and I went to see My Master Builder at the Wyndham Theatre last weekend. I found it slightly disappointing, and I don't think it makes the point that I thought the playwright wanted to make, because the main character is the main male character is slightly too sympathetic. So I thought I'd go back to the original text. I should say, by the way, that My Master Builder has Ewan McGregor, Elizabeth Debicki, and Kate Fleetwood in the main three parts. Kate Fleetwood was an astonishingly brilliant Lady Macbeth in the Patrick Stewart Macbeth that I saw a long time ago. She's a brilliant actress. She is brilliant in this, but I wasn't entirely convinced by the play. So I thought I'd go back to the original text, and on my not the original text, because obviously the original text is not in English, but the original text translation. And finally, and this is a slow burn. I've mentioned this before, probably. This is I'm reading John Clare Major Works, again another Oxford World Classics. This is a battered copy because I carry it around with me, and I am working through it very slowly. I'm on page 113 now. I am writing notes and underlining things and making comments. I've read something. I've decided I've taken to writing in my books because I read a quote on Blue Sky where somebody said, "Your life is not a museum. You don't have to treat these things like they're museum objects. If you want to write notes in something in a book, write notes in a book." So that it's my book as well. So there's even less reason to worry about it. I have taken to writing a short apology in the front of the book, saying that I've written notes in it. So if somebody by some chance gets this book, I suspect when I die, all this is probably going to go in landfill, because I can't see anybody want. Anyway. Maybe I should work out a way to get rid of them. So I'm working through this very slowly. This almost certainly won't be finished in June. This is almost like a year-long exercise. What I will say, from what I've read so far, which is quite a chunk of poems, is that I think in the introduction by Tom Paulin, a poet in his own right, he says that I'm going to read the introduction actually because it's worth listening. Although John Clare's genius has yet to be properly acknowledged and affirmed by that amorphous throng of readers, teachers, and critics who sometimes absent-mindedly decide reputations, he is England's greatest nature poet, and not that memory lost that he describes in his most tragic poem, I Am. I am, yet what I am none cares or knows. My friends forsake me like a memory lost. I am the self-consumer of my woes. Clare was mentally ill when he wrote those lines in 1843, and died in 1864, I think. I have to say, I think I was a bit sniffy about he's England's greatest nature poet, but I think he might well be, based on what I've read so far. He was a rural working class guy, and became a bit of a fashion amongst the snobs for a bit. And there's an essay in here he wrote, I think in response to people criticising his grammar and spelling, which is eccentric, let's put it that way. And this Oxford Classics edition doesn't correct everything. And so after a while you get used to the regular errors he makes, and it's pretty easy to work out what most of the smaller, weirder ones are. There's lots of notes, and I'm really enjoying it. But as I said, it's a real slow burn exercise. I think I'm going to take on one of these. I've got a pile of major works and collected works and complete works some of which I've read, most of which I just dip in and out of occasionally. I think I'm going to make it an exercise to read one of each of them over the course and not set a time on it. Just pick one up, work my way through it, and see where we come out. So that's where we are. That's my pile of current reading. I am in the midst of about 3 of them. The rest of what I normally do is I normally read the introductions before I start anything. So I've read the introductions to pretty much all of these, and then I will work out. The rest of today, I'm going to work out an actual reading plan for how I'm going to get these done by the 15th of June, or which ones I'm going to need to probably renew in the library. I don't like multiple renewals because you feel like you're stealing a book from somebody. But the other argument is if nobody wants it, then I can renew it. So but my objective is to read all of those books by the 15th of June. It won't happen, but that's my objective. If anybody's read any of these or has any comments to make or any suggestions on other reading around it, then I'll be happy to see them. Like, subscribe, comment, in an attempt to get some interaction with this. But other than that, that's my reading. Have a good one, and what I'm going to try and do is do an update at the end of next week, on where I am with everything, and some feedback on what I've finished. There you go. Have a good one. Bye bye.